Hello, YouTube. Sidekick here with my new YouTube channel. Now, there may be some of you that know me from my other YouTube channel or from my podcast on the history of iron bombing, but this is not that. This channel came about because of, I don't know, something that started about 2 years ago and which kind of gradually ran downhill until it became, well, a thing. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. About 2 years ago, I decided to start messing around with AI imaging on all of those websites. And after I experimented a bit, I decided that there was really one thing I really wanted to see if I could do with it. I wanted to see if I could take a real person, someone specific with a specific face, like let's say me, and generate photographs of that person, not illustrations, not artwork, but photographs, the kind that looked like they were taken with a camera in a real place in a real moment. Not because I was trying to fool somebody, but because I was just trying to see if I could imagine something and then make it come out on the screen. Now, given what I knew about AI, it seemed straightforward enough. The demos looked impressive. It seemed like the tools existed. And so I tried it, and it sort of worked. It came close occasionally to what I wanted, but there was something that wasn't quite right usually, and more to the point, it was really inconsistent. And so I did what any reasonable person who is me does when something doesn't work the way it's supposed to. I tried to fix it. And so I adjusted the prompts and varied all the parameters, and I tried running it multiple times to see if I could get at least one good image. Stop me if this starts sounding familiar. I would say this is what people fall into. I call it classic prompt engineering, which is to say you just keep trying to work within the same framework and expect different results if you just tweak it differently. But it got a little better, and then it hit a wall. And I'd push through the wall, and it would get a little better again, and it hit another wall, or something else that I thought I had fixed would break. So if you'd spend any time with AI imaging tools, you know exactly the cycle I'm describing. It rapidly becomes a question of the law of diminishing returns. So at that point, I thought, okay, the problem here is I don't actually know what I'm doing. The problem isn't the prompt. The problem is that I don't know what the system is doing with that prompt and how it's actually generating the image. So how am I going to figure that out? And that question turned out to be a lot more interesting than I expected. Now, I should tell you something about myself because it's relevant to what this channel is going to be. I do have a PhD in physics, and I spent 35 years in the space industry, including time working in mission control at NASA during the shuttle program. And after that, I spent years in senior leadership roles, and I now work as an executive coach to startup founders, mostly in the space sector. I mention this not to impress you, believe me. A physicist who spent 18 months learning to make better AI pictures of imaginary people is not exactly trading on his credentials here, but because it explains why I just couldn't leave the problem alone. I am constitutionally incapable of accepting it works, but I don't know why as a satisfactory answer. I needed to know why, and once I started pulling on that thread, couldn't stop. So, the tools that I was using, the ones that run in the cloud or on someone else's servers with someone else's rules, were impressive, but they had a fundamental limitation. Not because the underlying technology was bad, but because the economics were not working in my favor, essentially. Every experiment cost money. Every iteration cost money. And when you're doing the kind of systematic, patient, trial and error learning that you have to actually do to produce understanding rather than results, you need to be able to run a lot of experiments. So I decided I wanted to move everything to my own machine. And it turns out there are ways of doing that. So the first thing I had to do was learn how to do that. Now, I want to be clear about what that means in practice. Images take longer to generate on my hardware than they do on a cloud platform, significantly longer. What takes seconds on a rented GPO takes minutes on mine because I have a 3070 Ti. That sounds like a step backwards, maybe, but only in a narrow sense. What really changed was that the cost per experiment essentially dropped to zero. I could run as many tests as I wanted, as many times as I wanted, at 3 in the morning, if that's when the idea occurred to me. The constraint wasn't money anymore. It was knowledge and to some extent my time to review the results. And that, it turned out, was exactly the right constraint to have because it forced me to actually learn. So what did I have to learn over the next 18 months? Well, I discovered that what I actually needed to learn, and this is not a complete list, I needed to learn what AI sees when it looks at a person, how to get it to memorize the right things, how it applies that knowledge when it makes a new image, how AI creates the images in the first place, how to think the way AI thinks when it's doing that, how to guide that thinking towards what I actually wanted, and how to do all of that efficiently enough to produce dozens of images from a single idea. That's a partial list. And here's what nobody tells you, at least on any of the channels that I've found, and most tutorials. Most people pick one thing and tell you that's the secret. Learn this one trick, master this in one setting. Everything will work. Well, it won't, because it's really solving the problem is not one thing, and it never was. So my plan on this channel is to start working through that list and anything else I remember I had to learn along the way. And for each one, I'm going to try to explain how I understood the problem, the solutions I came up with, not as a definitive answer, but as my answer so far. I hope you'll watch because you want to learn. I also hope you watch because you have something to contribute to that conversation, because I guarantee there are things on that list I don't fully understand, and some of you probably do. I'm going to try very hard not to use jargon, or when I do, I'm going to try and explain it in plain language first, because here's the thing about jargon, especially in this kind of thing, it's a hiding place. When you reach for a technical term before you've explained the concept, half the time it's because you don't actually understand the concept well enough to explain it without the term. So I think I've spent 18 months earning the right to use the jargon, but I'd rather spend this channel making sure that I don't need to. Either way, welcome. There is a lot to talk about. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon.